Hey guys, welcome to Warhammer Stuff. So today we have Adeptus Custodes, Emissaries Imperatus, and we have the Genestealer Cults with the Twisted Helix Cult. So let's go ahead and check out the armies.
Alright everyone, so for today I'm bringing 2,000 points on the dot of Genestealer Cults, Twisted Helix. Now, I want to point out a note that this game is being recorded during the time that yellowscribe is down, for those of you who regularly use it, and as such I was not able to create a regular army. I was going to play Space Wolves today, but I was not able to actually make the list due to yellowscribe being down. And so for today, I'm going back with an old list, one that I've seen before was the last Genestealer Cults army that I played, because overall I was really happy with it. It was against the Imperial Knights game. So, getting into the army, first, my Warlord. As always I have to, the Patriarch. And so he has the psychic abilities Smite, Psionic Blast, and Mental Onslaught. And he has the Patriarch's Claws, which he basically gets reroll to wound, and all 6s to wound automatically turn to -6 and damage characteristic of 3. He has a 4-up invulnerable save. He has, I can, because of my psychic formula, I can reroll 1 psychic test. However, he has, I remember this, not Amulet of the Void Worm. He actually does not have this because I decided against it at the last minute last time, and so his actual Warlord trait is Preternatural Speed, which is every time he makes a melee attack, I can reroll the hit roll at the start of the fight phase. This Warlord can, if it's within engagement range of enemy units, can fight first. Oh wait, no, he has that right there. Wait, so what is this relic? No, his relic, his relic is actually Elixir of the Prime Specimen. Sorry, is instead of the Amulet of the Void Worm. The Elixir of the Prime Specimen is a unique relic that comes from the Twisted Helix, and essentially what happens is that I get to select 2 traits that the Biophagus can give, and basically that he gets to pick 2 of them. And so he has Exploding 6s, and he has 5-up Feel No Pain. And that is the Warlord. Then the Magus, over here, has Smite, Might from Beyond, which is a buff, giving them an extra attack, and Psychic Stimulus, which basically gives them the ability to advance or fall back, or declare a charge, or shoot and or declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back or advanced. And then as well as a Force Stave, Magnus Biodagger, which is trash, but as a Psychic Familiar. So basically she's just a back support role. And we have the Nexus, which has, well, it's basically trash, but he has the Cranial Inlay relic, which every time I spend a command point of stratagem on a 5-up, I get it back. And he also has his special abilities, which is I can forcibly have 1 enemy unit have a crossfire marker. Then the Biophagus, which is necessary for like a lot of my abilities and stuff, and he has Geonomic Enhancements, and he has Proficient Planning Alchemist Supreme, so I can automatically give a Cult Core or Aberrant unit a Geonomic Enhancement. Normally you have to roll for that, a D3, but with this I can give it to him. I have it marked down, so I'll remember where I get that, who I gave it to. Alright, and then to troops. So we have 3 units of Neophytes, and each of these squads have 2 flamers, 2 seismic cannons, and the rest have shotguns. And then we have a giant squad of Neophytes, which all have shotguns, but there are 4 seismic cannons, and there are 4 flamers, and of course a leader. And I believe that this squad, no, they don't have it. Alright, and then the Acolyte Hybrids, these guys are basically a squad of 13 or 14, and each of them have hand flamers, and they have from every angle, which means that they can come in from reserves 1 turn earlier. So turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, round is treated as 1 turn earlier. Oh, and I forgot to mention that these Neophytes here have the ability Lying in Wait, which means they can deep strike up to 3 inches away. Very important. Moving on to the elites, we have these Pure Strain Genestealers, 3 units, so 2 units of 5, and then we have 1 unit of 10, which has They Came From Below, which is a special ability which has 2 things. So I can make a choice. So when I have to reveal my ambush markers, I can immediately spawn these guys and then they get a free 9-inch move. Or I can immediately put them into reserves. So if I get the first turn, these guys are getting a first turn combat, pretty much. And then I have aberrants, which have the ability a trap is sprung. And so essentially what this is that on the turn they come in, their first charge, their very first charge, they get 3d6 and remove the lowest one, I believe. And then on to heavy supports, we have 2 Goliath Rock Grinders. This is the physical assault one with the drill dozer blade. It has pretty good stats, toughness 7, nice stuff. So one has a flamer and one has a heavy seismic cannon. So these are the heavy versions, very strong. Heavy seismic cannon has a lot of shots, a lot of strength. And then we have the flamer, which has a good amount of damage and a lot of shots, and 15 inches, by the way. And then we have 3 Goliath Rock Grinder trucks. So these guys basically have catch of a demolition assault charges, which is basically that it can only be used if there's a squad inside, but they get 1 shot of catch of demolition charges, very strong. And they have a twin autocannon and heavy stubber. Basically these guys are just here to be transporting my troops around, but because they're open topped, my guys on the inside can open fire at any time. So basically this is just to give my cheap easy squads a 3-up armor save and toughness 6. That's all it exists for. And to put out there, that Twisted Helix gives my entire army, including vehicles, a bootleg version of transhuman. I cannot be wounded on 1s or 2s. And that is 2,000 points of Genestealer Cults.
Alright, you guys, so for today I have 2,000 points of Adeptus Custodes. Originally I was going to do the Solar Watch shield host, but I decided in the end to do Emissaries Imperatus. So you'll see like all the vehicles and stuff. I really wanted to try out the Sisters of Silence. And so, yeah. So I am Emissaries Imperatus as my shield host. That gives me 2 things. One, it means at the start of the fight phase, basically my entire army has fight first, which is super cool. That should help the sisters not die, because they are kind of like worse sisters of battle. Like they're very anti-psyker focused. And the second trait it has is that I can ignore any roll modifiers to the hit and wound roll. I don't know how that applies to his Twisted Helix. So
unmodified wound roll cannot wound them. That's how it works. It's unmodified.
Yeah, okay, so then so then that's fine. I thought it probably would be. Okay, so my Warlord is the Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle Jetbike. He has a couple of things. He has the Salvo Launcher, for starters. He also has Superior Creation, which is I spent some points on that. It gives him a 5-up Feel No Pain. As well, or is that no, that's the Warlord trait, sorry. The thing I spend points on is Tip of the Spear. So if I charged or performed a heroic intervention with him, he can re-roll hit rolls and wound rolls of 1. And so that's pretty cool. I originally gave him a relic, but I took it back because I wanted the command point. And the Emissaries Imperatus relic it's actually pretty interesting, but I decided against it. So even though it's on his thing, he doesn't actually have it. And then I have Alea, which is the unique character for Sisters of Silence. And she basically helps buff other Sisters of Silence. And I gave her the Warlord trait Oblivion Knight, so 1 to advance and charge rolls for Sisters of Silence, essentially. And she can reroll hit rolls or wound rolls of 1. And yes, and then she has her own unique thing, which in addition to, yeah, so she gets to fight first naturally, and whatever. Anyway, but those are my 2 HQs. So moving on to that, I have my troops. So I have 2 squads of Custodians with the Sentinel Blades and the Presidium Shields. And they're just squads of 3, very simple. And then 1 squad of the Prosecutors. So they're just, my troops are just straight up, plain as can be. No nifty things or anything like that. Moving into elites, though, is where it gets nifty. I have 8 vigilators. 9 vigilators, sorry. 9 vigilators. And these are the ones with the great blades, so they basically pop out and they just have fancy swords that help them swing at strength 5. And then I have a squad of Alaris Custodians, 5 of them, because the Venerable Land Raider for the Custodies can carry 5 Custodies. Doesn't matter what they are, it's just 5 of them. So I just have 5 Terminators. They're going to ride up in it, and we'll kind of see what happens. They have the Castellan Axes for that +3 strength. That strength 8 is pretty nice. I actually really enjoy it. And then the Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought. Now, he actually has a stratagem called Eternal Penitent. So it gives him +1 attack, and he can re-roll charge rolls. I can only use it on 1 Dreadnought per game, but it's a stratagem that's used in the army building phase. Other than that, though, he's just a regular Contemptor Dreadnought. Oh, I guess, I don't know. He has 5 attacks. Ballistic skill 2, weapon skill 2. He has the multi-melt and the combat weapons, so I think some of his stats are a little better than the regular ones. He has a 6-up Feel No Pain and a 5-up Invuln, and -1 damage, so I don't remember how much of that is different from a Contemptor, a regular one, but other than the stratagem. And then I have, that's it for my elites. And then into the fast attacks, I actually have a squad of 10 Witch Seekers. So these are flamers. They pop up and they flame everything, and then hopefully they run away still alive. Given how soft they are, they may not live, but at least I'll have 10 flamers. And then obviously a squad of Praetors, what is their actual name? The Virtus Praetors, and they just have the Hurricane Bolters because I didn't have the points for the salvo launchers, otherwise they would. And then obviously behind them I have 2 Rhinos and a Venerable Land Raider that are just as they are. So I wanted the Sisters of Silence, but they're really soft, so I gave them the Rhinos. And I thought the Land Raider would be nifty because it's been forever since I've taken one, and I wanted to see how the Custodians do in a transport. I have a sneaking suspicion I should have just gone with another squad because they have 6-inch movement anyway. But yeah, so this is 2,000 points of Adeptus Custodes.
Alright, so for today we have the mission Data Scry Salvage, which is a Control 2, Control 3, Control More, and it is a mission objective where Data Intercept, where we have to complete an objective on our home objective, and we get points at the end of our turn equivalent to how many of those no man's land we control. Yes, and that's it. Alright, so for Genestealer Cults, the simple idea is that I wanted cover for my guys, my infantry, to move through walls, be able to move 2 places, be safe from shooting, and also have lines of fire that they could do a good amount of damage, as well as visibility for my psychic abilities. And so basically a bunch of L shapes around to give cover to my main base, as well as be safe if I move forward and such. And then finally for so basically just a bunch of cover in line of sight.
Yeah, so for me, basically being a melee army, I wanted to try and block as much line of sight as possible with the small walls, because all of my squads, with the exception of the Sisters of Silence, are really small, so they could hide easily. So I basically just want a bunch of stuff that I could run around and hide behind. I guess we'll kind of see how it goes. I also wanted to kind of mess up his deep strike stuff, so hoping all the random little wall sections will do that, but we'll see.
Alright, so for secondaries, Genestealer Cults, it's not looking good, so we're going to start with Brood Swarm, which is basically have more models on the table than my opponent. I get a point if I have more models in my deployment, his deployment, no man's land, and if I have all 3 of those, I get a 4th point. Ambush, which basically is I get 1 point if I kill an enemy unit that has a crossfire marker on there. I get another point if they had exposed. I get 2 points if someone who just came out of reserves or their special reserves that turn killed them. And so basically I have to which is just playing normally. And finally moving on to that, no prisoners. It's basically an extension of ambush. and sort of leads into brute storm. Basically, I'm just going to have to kill everything, and that is how my objectives in game is going to go.
We kind of were on the same idea with that one. So last time I took Stand Vigil, which basically just meant I had to hold more objectives in No Man's Land, which easy enough, but I wanted to try something different today, so I chose Might of Terra for the Adeptus Custodes, which is one of their army ones, which basically I have to kill units and none of my Custodes units can die. And then I get 4 points for that. And then I have Engage in All Fronts and Assassination. I have a pretty mobile army, and he has a lot of characters, so they were, I thought, pretty straightforward choices.
How does your Might of Terra work? Like, none of your guys die that turn, or is it entirely?
It's the battle round, so it's a bold choice. But it says Adeptus Custodes unit, so I assume that is ruling out the Sisters of Silence.
Oh, we can check on that to be sure.
Yeah.
All right, then.
But yeah, so basically in the battle round, I have to kill some guys, and then you have to not kill some guys.
All right, so for deployment, Genestealer Cults want to select which side as defenders, and they deployed first. So essentially the idea was first to place my command structure, make them be obvious and visible. They're safe and sound. The Broodlords there, Nexos, Biophages, they're all there like in a cluster and center, so they can intervene on other sides of the map. Now saying that, the next thing that happens is, as far as deployment is, playing chess with him to try to bait out things is not really going to happen against Custodies that well. And so, but I have the ambush markers, and so I have a total of 6 units that are going to be on the field. The rest are going to be in transports or in reserves or underground, their special abilities and stuff. And so, as far as it goes, each of the Goliath trucks has one of the units of 10 neophytes in there. Each of the Goliath rock grinders has a unit of Genestealers in there. The aberrants are in reserves. The acolytes are in reserves. The giant unit of neophytes is in reserves. And then the squad of 10 pure trained Genestealers is one of the ambush markers. And that pretty much was it, building up a spread. Nothing in the book says that I have to have each of these markers assigned to a certain guy. I believe so, but like in my head I still do, just in case. But so far it can be random, and it allows me to finagle when I finally have to set him up. I have to set him up at, if I'm first, my command phase, into my command phase. If my opponent is first, the end of his movement phase. And then the first model has to be within an inch of the center of the icon, and then the rest of the squad builds up around them. So we'll see how this goes. And that was my deployment.
Yes, so for my deployment is a little bit interesting. So I started with my transports, so the Land Raider. There's a lot of choke points, so there's only actually a couple of places the Land Raider can fit through, which was something I did not think about while I was placing all of the walls so haphazardly. So he kind of by default had to come down to the bottom, or I guess the top for you guys. And then my 2 other rhinos, just because they're pretty solid and they can create choke points really easy. And so it was nice to be able to just have something that I could place that could just run out, survive a turn, hopefully, and then pop stuff out and kill stuff. So really the only... Oh, and then I used a stratagem during the reserves and transport step called From Golden Light They Come. So with Adeptus Custodes, when they deep strike, it's not deep strike, it's From Golden Light, because they just are extra like that. So what it allows me to do is, for 1 command point, take an Adeptus Custodes infantry, biker, or dreadnought unit from my army and put them into From Golden Light to the deep strike. And so I took my Venerable Contemptor dreadnought, paying 1 command point, and put him in deep strike. And so somewhere in the game he's just going to show up and hopefully beat stuff to death. So that was kind of fun. I'm excited to see how that turns out. But anyway, so for the rest of it was pretty easy. My troops are poised for positions where they can take objectives quickly, except for obviously my prosecutors that are already on them. And then my bikes, I just put them in the middle on this piece of terrain, so that way they can just respond to whatever the heck is happening, because he's got a lot of units there's going to be a lot going on, so they're going to need to move around pretty quick, I think. But yeah, so that was my deployment. So for going first or not going first, I think I would actually rather go second. And I say that because I'm not super worried about my units, and him moving up and popping up around the board would give me better kind of read on where to move around to and deploy to. It also gives me a lot of targets. I know technically all the guys under the markers have to pop up somewhere in my turn if I go first. I can't remember where, but
end of the
so that
movement
way
phase.
at least I have movement. Is it end of movement or beginning?
End of your movement.
Okay, so yeah, so at the very least I would still have targets and stuff. But yeah, I would rather go second. I think it would give me, as Custodies, a little bit more of a tactical ability to respond, because for Custodies it doesn't necessarily matter so much where they go. They're just bullies at the worst. So yeah, so that's what I would say. I think I'd rather go second.
Well, as for me, whoever goes first is going to get 3 points. So a small lead on advantage because of the secondary objective.
Oh yeah, run onto whatever.
Run onto it, and one guy on the back does the objective stuff. So it's an automatic 3 points to whoever goes first. That's obvious. If I go first, though, I really set the targets for him. I have to be very cautious, though, with how I move and approach the battlefield. I want to hit first and hit last, essentially. With his deep strike shenanigans and all that stuff, and all the guys in the transports, it's going to be hard to say what I should do, but if I go first, I will get a turn 1 charge. That I do know. But a whole game will not... That's not really going to do anything. And that's not it. So... yeah, ultimately, if I go first, I probably could hit him a bit, and I can reposition better. Because he has some deep strikes on the second turn, probably going first will allow me to better respond. He'll move once, and I'll have moved twice and have a whole army down. So I think, strategically, it is better if I go first on my end for advantages and stuff. Because he will only have 1 movement phase, and then I'll go in and just beat him to death with my stuff. So, that's my plan.
Alright, well, let's see how we go.
Alright. 6.
4.
Well,
so I think we both got what we wanted.
and in time, we will see who was right. Genestealer Cults, turn 1.
Alright, you guys, so before the first battle run started, the Witch Seekers, so the Sisters of Silence with Flamers, have an ability called Seeker Cadre. Where if they're outside of a transport or in one of the rhinos, it can make a normal move. That's pretty much it. So them in their rhino moved up 6 inches. And then as well, I used the Death Mark pre-game or before the first battle round thing on his big squad of pure strains. And so what it is the Vigilators basically mark someone for death. And so if they ever come up against them, they'll actually be able to have full hit rerolls on that squad. And so I'm curious if that'll be relevant. I don't actually know where they are on the map. But I thought it was a nifty stratagem. I'll give it a go. So the Vigilators death marked the 10-man Genestealer squad. And we'll see how that goes.
Alright, so command phase, Nexos marked the Custodian on the Sentinel squad on the right with a crossfire marker for free. Then after that happened, essentially, whatchamacallit, well, then I basically did a bunch of running. So the pre-restrained Genestealer, the squad of 10, was placed on first. Now, because of the ability I gave them, which was they came from below, allows them to either go into reserves when their ambush markers are revealed, or they get a free 9-inch move. So they got their 9-inch for free. Then when I got to running them, they did they rolled poorly. I used my reroll, got a 5, and so they would have had 13 inches, but because of Twisted Helix, adds +1 to their movement, so they had a 14-inch move plus 9, so they moved quite the distance. Then, pretty much the rest of my entire army moved. The Goliath trucks that ran on the hollow HUD thing, which is basically difficult ground, which subtracts -2. Because of the +1 of Twisted Helix and just the 1 from running, they were able to basically ignore it. So the pure strength Genestealers that were inside the Goliath Rock Grinder came out and ran forward. The rest of the vehicles moved into positions, and that pretty much was the entire turn. It was just me moving them. I did remove one of the Goliath trucks because I realized I was supposed to go for the objectives. My Nexos eventually started doing the objectives and stuff, or like the action, the secondary action, and yeah, that pretty much is it. And the Patriarch failed at a run and only did 1, so he ended up running only 10 inches because of Twisted Helix +1, and he's up next to one of the Goliath trucks. Maybe not the best location, but we'll see how it goes. Alright, so for the Psychic phase, the Magus is going to go to bat. So she's completely outside of any of their -1, -2, -3s from their Psychic ability dampening things. And so the Magus casted, Psychic Stimulus, which basically gives a unit of my choosing within 8 inches +1 to attack. And so it went off on a 9. Now, however, notice that she does not have line of sight to anyone, and she is nowhere near the Genestealers, which I marked for their target. However, there is a stratagem that for 1 CP, she can select anyone on the board for her buffs. And I rolled a 5 up for the Nexos for refunding the cost, and so I basically gave my Pure Saint Genestealers on the other side of the board +1 attack easily. And that was the Psychic phase. Alright, so for the charge phase, I had my Genestealer Cults charge the Guardian Sentinels that had the marker on them, and the Psychona Rhino because it's right next to them and I have to anyway. And so essentially what I did is I rolled a double 4, and so I spent 1 CP to re-roll it, and I changed the things on the dice to make sure that I'd have a chance. I just needed a 5 because the distance I needed was 5.4, and you have to get within half an inch. And then I ended up rolling a 11. So that was fine. So my Genestealer Cult entirely got in there. And then I will point out that the Nexos, when I went to roll a 5 up to regain for the reroll, I got a 5 up. So I've spent so much CP, but I haven't lost any this turn. Been very good on that. Alright, so the Genestealer's piling into the Custodians. Now, he has that always fight first in the fight phase. Well, that's not going to happen. The reason that's not going to happen is because the marker light on him, there is a stratagem that allows me to force them to fight last if they have a marker light on them. So for 1 CP, I use that, which my Nexos refunds. This is like the 5th time he's done that. And then I swing. I have 50 attacks, which turns into 19 wounds. And then he saves... his entire squad is wiped out, but one guy saves 1.
11 of them, I think. So
yeah.
8 wounds got through.
Yeah. And so basically he had 1 guy left. That was disappointing. I needed to wipe out that squad. And then the guy swung back and killed 2 of my Genestealers, which I then used a CP to try to re-roll it because they have a 4-up invulnerable save, and I did not make it. But my Nexos then gave me another command point back from the refund. He hasn't missed once. And no morale phase. Alright, off to an interesting start. So my Nexos finishes the action at the end of the turn, the secondary, and I have 3 objectives, and I can score my maximum 3 points there for the secondary. Brood Swarm, I have more models on the battlefield on my deployment zone and in the no man's land because he hasn't had a turn yet, so I get an easy 2 points. Ambush, if he failed 1 more save, I would have that. Then no prisoners is something built up later. So it was a pretty good first turn. So we'll see how things go from now.
Alright, you guys, so for movement, a couple of things happen. The Rhino in combat with the Genestealers left because it I mean, you know, they have tremendous physical capability, but combat is not the place for them. So he booked it. So my Witch Seekers are actually still in there. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but they booked it. Then my Vigilators and Alea got out of their Rhino because the unit that they death marked was right next to them. So naturally, they're going to get out, and we're going to see if it was worth the command point. And then their Rhino just went to sit on the objective because, I mean, I could have sat on the choke point, and I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, but, you know, this way it can sit on an objective. Not that it can take it, but it can sit on it and not really be super seen by anything else. Because I guess it can still sit on points. So, yeah. I've never really used Rhinos, actually. I think this is the first time I've used Rhinos, so I don't really know what to do with them. But anyway, and then my Adeptus, my Custodians towards the top by the Land Raider ran. They rolled a 6, so they were actually able to get all the way onto this objective. So I think I actually took this from him because it's their objective secured and they count as 2 models each. So there's 4 objective secured models sitting on this, which is kind of cool. And then my Land Raider ran up. Well, it didn't run, but it moved up because it has las cannons. I'm going to see if I can't really see his models, so I don't know what he can actually see. Because they just show up as pearls on my screen. One of the many funs of TTS, there's always little random glitches. But hopefully he can shoot something. And then my, what are they called? Virtus Praetors, the bikes, just kind of moved up the middle to shoot a bunch of stuff and then fight to the death. So yeah, so that was my movement phase. All around pretty good. Alright, so for shooting, a couple of things happened. So I started off with my Custodian in combat with the Genestealers. Their swords are pistols. So he shot and he did nothing.
I saved one.
And, oh yeah, so I guess one got through, but he saved it, so yeah, same thing. My 2 Rhinos didn't shoot. One left combat, so they couldn't. The other is on one side of a wall and can't see anything. My Prosecutors are doing an objective, so they can't. And then my Land Raider shot at his Rock Grinder all the way up here in the corner. But he has a -1 damage thing, so it only did 1 damage. And then 2 of my las cannons went through, but then he got double 6s on his saves, which was exactly what he needed, so that was it. And then, oh yeah, okay, then my Shield Captain shot at the Goliath Rock Grinder and did 5 damage. He would have done 6 damage, but again, the -1. And then my Praetors with Hurricane Bolters shot, and they did 5 damage exactly, which would have killed him, but then he used a command point to re-roll 1, and he got it, so the Goliath Rock Grinder is down to 1 wound. So
he lives.
So, yeah, just barely. So I'm trying to decide what to do with him. But yeah, so that was the shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so for charges, the Vigilators and Alea got in without any issues. It's not a surprise, but... and then my Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle Jetbike charged the Rock Grinder. He made it. I had to use a command point to re-roll because he failed the first one by an inch. But he made the second one. And then I had trouble deciding what to do with the Virtus Praetors, but I decided to have them charge the Far Truck and Genestealers, since there's no reason for them to charge the Rock Grinder, because theoretically the Captain can do it. And if they consolidated into the Genestealers, they wouldn't be able to swing. So I was like, they might as well just try and go for it. I needed probably an 8 or a 9, and they failed. So they just kind of are sitting out in the open. We'll see how that works for them later on. And that was my charge phase.
All right. So in the fight phase, we had a huge pause in the middle because we had a conundrum. So his entire army fights first, and then I want to know if the 2 CP interrupt stratagem would work under that. And then we had to consult the internet and look through some arguments and stuff. And what we came up with is the official ruling, or the wording of the interrupt is after your opponent uses one of their charging units. And so I was like, okay, I can then interrupt. And we had a bit of back and forth. And so what we basically understood based on the rules is The interrupt stratagem will work, but for all the other cases, all the extra fights in the battlefield, all my guys will end up going last because all his regular combats that's out of the charges will also fight before my guys. So that's how we understood the rulings. So, continue.
Yeah, so I guess then with combat, my Vigilators swung, and they actually did a lot of damage. He has a 4-up invuln for Genestealers, so he had a flat save no matter what. But so you save, I don't know how many you saved, but 7 went through, leaving 1 Genestealer left alive.
Yep.
And then he interrupted. That's where our huge thing was, and his Rock Grinder swung on my Shield Captain. My Shield Captain failed to save. And I was like, well, I'll use a command point, re-roll it, rolled, and he failed again. And then it went to his 5-up Feel No Pain, so he saved 1 of them, so he took a single wound instead of the 2, because one of his Rock Grinder's attacks actually made it through. And then my Custodian, you know, killed the 1 Genestealer. So, yeah, so that was the fight. Oh, and then my Shield Captain swung back and I think like 4 went through, 3 or 4 went through. But so he destroyed the Rock Grinder with the 1 wound left, did not explode, and he did not consolidate. Because if anything wants to get in combat with him, they will. So there's really no, I don't think there's a point in me moving him except to leave him a little more out in the open. Which, now that I say it, doesn't actually sound great either. But anyway, so that was the fight phase. Alright, you guys, so for points, I was doing the mission Secondary, and I had 2 No Man's Land objectives, so I got 2 points for that. I actually pulled off Might of Terra this turn. Now, granted, I have a Custodian with 1 wound left running around the board, so I don't know if I'll get it next turn, because it's a full battle round, but we'll see. And then I did get 2 points for engaging all fronts because of 1 of my Rhinos and the Land Raider. I did not get Assassination because I'm nowhere near his characters. But yeah, so I did okay, I guess, on Secondaries this round. I got a little more than he did, but we'll see the rest of the game.
Alright, so for the movement phase, or command phase actually, Nexos marked the prosecutors that are on his home objective with a marker light. And then after that, the, whatchamacallit, and then just basic movements. So my Pure Strength Genestealers and the Goliath Rock Grinder up top moved out and got close to the enemy. The Goliath Rock Grinder then moved around the objective to confront the Land Raider. The Goliath truck that was on the objective moved to touch the wall so it could see through to shoot through. Goliath truck on the bottom also did the same, as well as the Goliath truck on the objective surrounded by the 2 Rhinos moved up to have line of sight. My Patriarch moved, did some chest movement, but basically he's halfway in between the Praetors and his Warlord. And then after all that was done, at the end of my movement phase came the very long part of the Genestealer Cult, finding exactly where to put all my reinforcements. And basically a lot of back and forth and stuff like that, but in the end I decided my Acolyte Hybrids, the green squad, would be at the bottom, my Neophyte Hybrids would be on the right. I wanted to try to make sure that I could get exposed and all that stuff going off, and yeah, so once that was done, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just, and then the Aberrants came next to the Land Raider. The big giant red squad came behind the objective. I could have had the objective, but I wanted the +1s and stuff. Alright, so for the Psychic phase, the Patriarch targets his Warlord, the Shield Captain, with his Psionic Blast, which if I needed a 5, and if I rolled higher than his Psychic test, he'd get a flat 3. It didn't go through, so he got D3 mortal wounds, which I rolled a 1 for, or a 2, but basically a 1 for. I re-rolled that, and I got a 2, so 1 of those went through because he has a 5-up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds. My Nexos did not refund that for me. Then I had my, then him cast Smite. He got a Super Smite off and did 4 mortal wounds, which my opponent saved 1 of them, so he took 3. Then I had my Magos go, and my Magos buffed the Aberrants with her, Might from Beyond, the one that gives +1 attack. and it went off, and then I spent 1 CP to make it so that it could be given to them despite not having line of sight and range. And the Nexos did not refund it, so these are the first 2 times that he has not been able to refund it. He's done it every other time. And then the the Magus then cast Smite on the shield captain and gave him an extra 2 wounds. So things have been going very well on that front, but we'll see how things go. Alright, and now for an incredibly complicated shooting phase. So I started off with the Goliath Rockgrinder up top, firing his flamer at the Custodians next to him, and he did 1 wound. 2d6 strength, 6 AP -1. Didn't do jack. Alright, and then I went with the green squad on the bottom. So I spent a stratagem where the person they're targeting counts as exposed, but they all have to shoot at him. So essentially the whole squad fired at those guys, those Sisters of Silence, and they did tons of wounds. They had 14 hand flamers, did a ridiculous amount of attacks, and wiped out the squad entirely. Then up top, the Neophytes fired at the squad 5 there. They had cover, so they have +1 to their save. And so I spent a stratagem, and essentially all my 6s auto-wounded. So the Flamers went first, did like 3 wounds. Then the Seismic Cannons went, did some wounds. And that was it. The shotguns never got a chance to fire. And then, so what basically happened next is how the crossfire markers work is that if an opponent has one, it's +1 to hit. If I can draw a line between 2 crossfire markers on an enemy unit, that goes if an enemy unit is between 2 of my crossfire units that doesn't go through terrain or like cover, stuff like that, on line of sight blocking terrain, then they count as exposed, which is +1 to wound. And so how you give this is you hit the enemy with 5 hits of a gun, or 1 hit from a gun that has more than 1 damage. So the Goliath trucks would fire on a specific target with their autocannon, hit once at least, and then give the crossfire marker onto an enemy, giving me +1 to wound. And if I had them right between 2 of my crossfire units, I would also get +1 to wound. So it was this basic back and forth, which is very hard to remember, of me using the Goliath trucks to mark someone, and then the squads on the inside opening fire, doing tremendous damage, and stuff like that. And so it was this good back and forth of just strategery, which took a long time because I would go from one side of the board to the other to get my buffs, and then apply them as needed, and then shoot as needed. And also my Nexos has only failed 2, count them 2, 5-up rolls for refunding stratagems. Only 2. I've spent like 10 command points this entire game so far. Yeah, that was my very long and bloated shooting phase. Alright, so for charges, Patriarch charged the Praetors, made it an easy. Okay. Then the Pure Strength Genestealers next to him charged in and looped around to still be on the objective, because also, like, couldn't really move that much. And then I had the Aberrants charge the Land Raider. Now they get 3d6 and discard the lowest because of their ability, their first charge. They get to do that. Then I had the Acolyte Hybrid Green Squad charge the Rhino that was closest to them. They needed a 9. They failed it. I re-rolled that, and I failed it again. And the Nexus did not refund it. That's the 3rd time he has failed a refund, but I'm fine with it. He has overperformed heavily. Then my Pure Strength Genestealers up top charged their Custodians and did pretty well. And then my Rock Grinder also charged the Venerable Land Raider, and this is going to be an interesting fight. So we'll see what happens. Alright, so fight phase. It went a lot better than I thought. So the Patriarch went first, since he does have always fight first, so because it's my turn, I would get to go first. And he has exploding 6s, and because of his Warlord trait, he gets to re-roll to hit, and always fight first. And so he did horrible. He needed 2s, and then he re-rolled the 1s, and then got some 6s, and so that affected his his relic, which gave him exploding 6s and 5-up Feel No Pains, the Twisted Helix one. And in the end, he was able to do a bunch of good wounds. He did 3 wounds that were AP -3 damage 2, and then he did 3 wounds that was AP -6 3 damage. And my opponent saved all the AP -3 ones. but he then proceeded to fail 2 of the AP-6 ones, and killed one guy, and the other guy took a bunch of damage. Then he got to swing. He had the Praetor swing on my Genestealers, and they killed 1. Then I had my Pure Strain Genestealers up top swing on his Custodians because I spent 1 CP. They had a crossfire marker, so 1 CP forced them to fight last. And now that they fight last, I was able to swing because he had always fight first throughout his whole army. And so basically I swung and did tons of wounds, and only 1 guy survived with 1 wound. Then his Land Raider, with always fight first, swung and did nothing to my Aberrants. Then my Aberrants swung with +1 attack because of the psychic ability from the Magus. Might from Beyond, I believe. Yeah, give him +1 attack, and they did 11 wounds to it. Then my Rock Grinder swung and did 4 wounds to it, and so it has 1 wound left. Mostly because of his Feel No Pain has clutched him from that final death. And then, yeah, my Genestealers, the Praetor swung on him and did 1 wound. And then his Custodian that was surrounded by Genestealers on the objective swung and killed 1 of my Genestealers. And that was the fight phase. That was a massive turnaround. And I did manage to control 2, control 3, and essentially what happened was I Brood Swarm. I have more models in my deployment zone. I have more models in his deployment zone, 20. And then I have more models in No Man's Land because the giant green squad for sure pushes me over, and he has like 2 vehicles and 2 guys technically on there, so I get 4 points for Brood Swarm. Ambush. My red squad that came in for this turn shot and killed a unit that had exposed and crossfire marker, and they did come in, so I get a full 4 points for that. And so that was a big turnaround. So, wow. Genestealer Cults are better than Blood Angels, I'm saying it now.
Alright, you guys, so for my movement phase, a couple of things came in. So my Contemptor came in, my Witch Seekers popped out of their Rhino, and my Terminator's still in their Land Raider because it's in combat, but yeah, whatever. So my Witch Seekers popped out and they moved up closer to all of his Acolytes, and then my Custodian, the single guy, moved on to the objective up top. Alea moved down towards the big red squad. And my Custodian Dreadnought popped in behind his kind of back thing, and we'll see what happens there. And then, yeah, that was the movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, my Witch Seekers popped out from the Rhino in the movement. They shot his squad, and they did 18 shots, went through. He saved 1 of them because they needed a 6. Because their flamers are -1, and so the flamers wiped the squad. Then the Land Raider shot at his Aberrants, and with the Twin Heavy Bolter and the 2 Twin Link Las Cannons, they killed 1 guy. So that was unfortunate. And then the Contemptor Dreadnought shot, and so there was a split fire. So his Combi Bolter targeted the Biophagus, and his multi-melter shot at the Rock Grinder? The what was
Rock
it?
Grinder, yeah. Yeah. A Goliath truck.
Yeah, okay, there we go. And so I started with the multi-melta, and it destroyed the Rock Grinder. Ended up doing 13 damage to it, because both of the shots hit, and they both went through. I used a command point to reroll 1 of the failed wounds, which was successful. And so they just decimated it. And then the squad popped out. And so the question that we have for you guys is, because he already targeted the Biophagus, it was just an order of shooting, that since the squad popped out, he's saying the Biophagus is protected. But it doesn't count. I don't think it counts because they weren't there during the targeting. Yeah, and so they were already targeted, blah blah blah. The shooting theoretically happens at roughly the same time, I think, as far as the order goes.
Yeah, the back and forth is simply that he declared all his targets as he's required to beforehand, and he chose to fire at the Rock Rider first. He completely killed it, and the inside's disgorged. And then all of a sudden now the character he was going to shoot at is surrounded by a squad of 3 or more, and the character's no longer within, is not the closest. So based off that reading, I'd say that he's lost a target. I mean, because there are situations where you can declare on the vehicle, and then you declare on the guys on the inside if they pop out, or other situations like that. But he shot himself into a corner where... That's how I'm seeing the rules, but if any of you guys know, like, the answer, like, if because he targeted and all of a sudden did the target disappear because he shot at something else, or like he could no longer target it after something exploded or stuff like that. That's what we're asking, if who's in the right here. But we're going with the guy's disgorged and he's no longer a viable target. So continue.
Yeah, we're, I guess, technically going with that. Anyway, and then that was the shooting. So not super eventful, but I was able to wipe some stuff, so that was nice. Alright, you guys, so with my charges, Alea charged in. He did a bunch of Overwatch, and so she took 4 damage, but she saved everything else. So she's still alive with 1 wound. We'll see if she survives the combat phase. And then my Contemptor Dreadnought charge, he needed an 8 because when his units popped out, he moved them closer to me. So he got an 8 exactly and was able to get in. And so he charged, essentially. So yeah. Alright, you guys, so for combat, trying to think what fought where. I don't even know. I think I had a jet bike. So I started with the jet bike first on the Patriarch. I think only 2 went through, but he saved both of them because there's a 4-up invuln. And then he swung back and he killed the jet bike, and then the other guys consolidated into my Rhino. Then I swung, I think, with Alea, and she killed 4 guys. And then moved on to my Soul Custody guy. He had 1 wound go through, but he saved it, so nothing happened. And then I swung with my Land Raider and surprisingly, nothing happened. And then I swung with my Dreadnought, and he squished 4 guys, and that was it. And then he swung back, killed my Land Raider. It only had 1 wound left, so that's not surprising. But and then he killed my 1 Custody guy, and then that was it. Alea, I'd use a command point to keep her alive. And the Dreadnought is fine because it's a Dreadnought.
My Genestealer swung on his Rhino as they consolidated into after they were free from the middle combat. Did nothing. And yeah, I did nothing else. As far as morale phase, my squad fighting the Venerable Dreadnought had to take a morale test. They were fine. On a 5 and a 6, they would have ran. And then the giant squad fighting Alea did fine as well. They rolled a 1. And that was the entire fight phase and morale phase.
Alright, you guys, so I had 2 points on the primary, and then literally just the 3 points for engaged on all fronts. So not really good secondaries this turn, but this might be the end of the game anyway, so I don't know how much it matters. And yeah.
Alright, so movement was a lot of chess movements. So I already controlled more, so pretty decent. So I'm disgorged my neophytes from 1 vehicle, or from both vehicles. That way I could pad out my numbers so I could get the proper Brood Swarm, a full 4 points for Brood Swarm. And these guys are out and they have line of sight to the Witch Seekers. The truck has it there. The Nexus also gave the Witch Seekers a, what you want to call it? That crossfire marker already. Then, as well as that happened, then the Goliath truck up top disgorged and pivoted around a bit. The Aberrants and the Pure Strength Genestealers moved towards his Alaris Custodians. My Goliath Rock Grinder moved back as well. And then, yeah, my Patriarch moved to try to reach the Venerable Dreadnought, but it's just not going to happen. He ran, but he won't be able to make it. And yeah, so now we'll see what happens. Alright, so for the Psychic phase, the Magus targets the Venerable Dreadnought with Smite and rolls a Super Smite. Does 5 wounds? Yeah, and then my opponent saves one of them with his Feel No Pain, and successfully 4 wounds against the Venerable Dreadnought, and that was the Psychic phase. Alright, so for the Shooting phase, so at the bottom, they're Witch Seekers. I fired with my Goliath truck and my Neophyte squad that was in range and wiped out most of them except for 4. Then after that, my Goliath Rock Grinder fired at the Alars Castellans up top and successfully killed one and did a wound to another with its 2d6 strength 6 AP -1 flamer. And then I had everything else shoot and they did absolutely nothing. The Goliath truck fired, the squad nearby fired, did nothing. Yeah, so mixed bag. Alright, for charges, basically up top, my Aberrants, Genestealers, and Goliath Rock Grinder surrounded those Terminators. That's it. Alright, so for the fight phase, I had to come prepared. So I spent my very last CP I held on for this entire round to make the Alaris Terminators up top fight last, because they had a crossfire marker on there. That's the only way I could bypass his always fight first shenanigans. But I swung with the Aberrants and successfully killed off 2, but I forgot that he had other always fight first elsewhere, so it didn't affect the overall flow of the flow that the game had to go by. So we moved on to all his swings. So his Alea swung, did 5 wounds, 2 damage each, but because my whole squad has a 5-up Feel No Pain from Twisted Helix, the Biophagus, one of them was actually able to save 2 of them, and so only 4 died again. And then his Rhino swung on my green squad of Pure Strain Genestealers and killed 1. Then his Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought swung and killed off the entirety of the squad that was in front of him. Well, it happens. And then after that, then the rest of my squads up top swung. The Genestealer swung and did 1 wound. Then the Goliath Rock Grinder swung and killed another Alaris Terminator, so now there was only 1 left. And then the Neophyte Hybrids with 10 attacks swung on Alea, missed most of them, did 1 wound, and then she saved it. And so Alea lives again, slaughtering a total of 8 of them. And then it went to the Green Genestealer swung on the Anathema Psychona Rhino, and they did 2 wounds to it, surprisingly. And then that was the end of the fight phase. Morale, my squad, red squad up top, rolled a 2. They needed to roll a 5 or higher to fail morale. My opponent's Witch Seekers at the bottom rolled a 4, which they needed a 2 or less. So 1 person left, and then they rolled 3 dice, and another one was a 2 because they're under half strength, so 2 of them disappeared to morale. And that was the fight phase and morale phase. Alright, so for points, I got 12 points for this round. Brood Swarm, I got a full 4 because I have more models in my deployment zone, my opponent's deployment zone, and No Man's Land since I discouraged the 2 transports. Ambush, I didn't kill a single unit this turn. No Prisoners is slowly building up in the background. And that's the points.
Alright, you guys, so for movement, my Rhino left combat with the Genestealers, leaving them open to be shot, but also taking back the home objective. And the Contemptor just moved a little, a couple of things just moved closer to stuff. Because my Custody unit is a troop, he had objective secured, and in this game, with this scenario, the No Man's Land objectives, if you have objective secured, you can hold it without being on it, as long as, the last unit was yours with objective secure. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, my Adeptus Custody, I don't know why I keep using Adeptus, and my Rhino shot at his Genestealers. Together they were able to kill 1 of them. Then my Witch Seekers shot their Flamers at his little squad there. They were able to kill off 2 because I rolled really bad on their shots. And then the Contemptor Dreadnought shot 4 shots at the Magos with the Combi Bolter. He did 1. And then the Multi-Melta went through and it just melted the one guy.
The Nexos.
Yeah. And then that was the shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so for charges, my Custody charged his Genestealers. He got in with a 7, it's exactly what he needed. Then my Contemptor Dreadnought charged both of his characters. He was able to fit in conveniently right in between them. And then my Rhino actually charged his squad, because I don't really know what else to do with the Rhino, so he did that. And that was combat, or that was charges. Alright, you guys, so for combat, my Contemptor cleaned up the 2 characters that were left. One of them, I think, just barely, but, and then my, Custody, is that their actual name? Just Custodian? My Custodians. Custodian Guard. Okay. They, he was able to kill 2 of the 3, no, there was only 2 there, because one got shot. So he killed 1 of them. And then, Alea killed another, like, 4 guys or something like that. And the Alaris Terminator killed 2. And the Rhino, I think, actually killed 1. So, all of it unsurprising. But I guess it was okay. And then he swung back. He did 3 wounds to Alea, but she actually saved all of them. And then the Alaris Terminator took it to the face. So
Yep.
that was it.
Yeah, and none of my other guys did anything. Yeah. That was the fight phase and morale.
Alright, you guys, so for points, my primaries, I got just the 1. As of right now, though, I hold more, I think, actually, but I don't know. Anyway, not important. I actually got 4 points from Might of Terra. Oh no, the Alaris Terminator actually died, so I didn't even get those 4 points.
Oh.
Forgot about that guy. I got 2 points for Engagement Fronts, and then I got 9 points for Assassination, because I killed 3 characters. So he really only has the 1 left, but so I was actually able to jump up quite a few points, but I think at this point we're actually going to call the game, because I don't think I can come back from this, because he just has a lot of units and I don't. So yeah, so I think we're actually going to call it here.
Alright then. Alright everyone, so we have called the game. We did a little bit of theory hammering afterwards, where we see what happened if the turn continued to make sure it was true. And basically, just by doing almost nothing, Genestealer Cults would have gotten up to 65 points. The Patriarch would slaughter the Venerable Dreadnought because the Psychic phase weakened it heavily with Smite and Psychic Onslaught, and then in melee absolutely destroyed it because it only has a 5-up invulnerable save compared to 4-ups that everyone else has in his army. And so by the end of it, just the way points were, immediately would slide to the front and there'd be very little left. So we were sure that the game was pretty much done there. And so for MVP, LVP, my MVP, it's 2 of them. First, the Nexos, for giving me so many command points the entire game, because he only failed, I actually counted on a dice, 4 times did he not roll 5s. Apart from that, he rolled 5-ups every single time. He even got me that intervention, or like interrupt my enemy for a combat. It got 2 CP from that. He was absolutely instrumental tactically. I was able to do rerolls so much that I was starting to throw them away on cheap things because I was just getting too spoiled with him. Cranial Inlay worked wonders. So Nexos is MVP. The only close second is the Patriarch for absolutely slaughtering everything. The fight first really came into play. He was never wounded once. He helped slaughter the Warlord. He helped slaughter those Praetor bikes. He slaughtered the Contemptor Dreadnought. Wherever he went, he was a very powerful force to reckon with. Being able to fight first really was a big deal. His 4-up invulnerable saves, his exploding 6s, his 5-up feel no pains, very useful. LVP, the red squad over there. Now, despite the fact that they showed up and completely wiped out the squad he had on the objective, on his home objective, they then proceeded to be one-shot by one Alea. They didn't kill her in Overwatch. They did 4 wounds to her via the Flamers in the Overwatch, but right after that she proceeded to keep butchering them left and right. They even failed a morale test that we forgot to record and lost over half of them. But that was left like 5 or 6 of them. It was so bad. These guys, They should have couldn't even do a single wound to a 3-up armor save character. Absolutely terrible. So that was my MVP, LVP. What'd you got?
Yeah, so my MVP, I think the whole army didn't do so well for itself here. I don't know. Anyway, but I would say MVP was probably the Contemptor. He probably did the most.
He got you 9 victory points.
Yeah, so he killed 3 characters, he killed a vehicle, and he killed a squad, which is essentially more than anything else can really say. Except Alea, she might fit there. And then LVP was the Land Raider by a landslide.
How come?
His last cannons never did anything. He only did 1 wound. 1 damage like the entire game. I think maybe he killed an aberrant, so maybe like 3 damage.
Mm-hmm.
But like he literally did nothing, and he was almost 300 points. Like that's a lot of Custodies I could have gotten for him. And then the ones that he was carrying were trapped in him most of the game, and then when they did come out, they actually weren't even able to do anything. But that's another thing. And so yeah, so I don't know if I've actually taken a Land Raider before. I probably have with the Space Marines like forever ago, but yeah, I was not impressed with it. Yeah, it has a 2-up ballistic skill and armor save, so that seems kind of nice, and it can take 5 Custodies, Terminator or whatever, but it was not good. And shortly behind it was also the Rhinos. I've never really taken Rhinos before. 75 points, so they're not like crazy expensive. At least as far as the army is concerned. One of those Alaris Terminators was 60 points, so... yeah, they literally they carried troops, and then once the troops were out, they just kind of didn't do anything. And sure, they could technically block choke points, but that only works against other vehicles, because an infantry can just go through stuff. And they only have a storm bolter, so I was not impressed with the vehicles in this. The Contemptor, I was good. I was actually kind of surprised with how it worked, how it went out. But yeah, so that's my MVP, LVP. Yeah, it was an interesting game. Like I told you, I made 2 lists, but I was like, I really wanted to try the Sisters of Silence, because they have interesting enough, but by the end of it, I was not really impressed with them.
They are an interesting bunch. They're mostly made for sitting back and sitting on the objectives. They're cheap objective holders.
Yeah, well, at least the prosecutors. But the flamers, they have super short range with the vigilators that literally they don't even have a pistol, they literally just have a sword. And then their anti-psyker bubble is 18 inches, so for that to be of any effect, which it wasn't this entire game, because I even have I think I have 3 or 4 stratagems for the Sisters of Silence. But they were never in range to do it, so it was, I don't know, I was underwhelmed by them tremendously. Sure, the Flamers came out and they melted 1 squad, okay. The Vigilators, they got into combat with the Deathmark squad, which that was kind of cool. They were able to reroll hits and they wiped the squad, except for 1 guy, but then the Custodian wiped him. I don't know. I didn't super care. Alea, I would probably take her again, because if I need to be aggressive with that 18-inch anti-psyker thing, I need someone who can actually just be up, and she's a character, so she could probably be saved by actual Custody troops.
Yeah.
If I took her, but I don't think I would take the Sisters of Silence again, except for the troop. Just again, literally just cheap point holders. I think it's 60 points for the 5 of them or something.
60 points for 5 is actually really good.
Yeah, they're as far as the army is concerned, they're super cheap, because again, that 60 points for that 1 squad is 1 whole Terminator. Now, granted, the Terminators can be taken as a single person, or you can take them as a squad and use a stratagem to actually separate the squad into individual Terminators, which is kind of nifty. But yeah, so I think Custodies have a lot of pros. I don't think Sisters of Silence and their vehicles are one of them. Now, I've heard a lot of things about the Forge World vehicles. So, like, they have three dreadnoughts. One's a heavy support, but two other elite dreadnoughts. That one, it literally just has a shield and like a spear, and it's just a monster. And another with a shield and a sword or something. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I think Custodies, the troops, like the actual Custodies, are super solid, and they can be real mean. I think that's one of the reasons why they're one of the top
Well,
meta
the reason why I was able to really stand a chance was two reasons. Apart from the Nexus really helping me, it was the stratagem to force you to fight last, and my Patriarch being able to fight first. That was it. And so I was able to strategically throw him into a place where he could do some damage, good, and have some fodder near him to take some wounds. And then as well, forcing you to fight last really was very important in a lot of situations. That was a very big deal, very clutch. And yeah, and my Genestealers they did okay. I wasted the squad of 10. I expected them to do a bit better, but then they were just obliterated.
Well, really,
turn.
the big thing with your Genestealers is they have a 4-up invuln, and you historically roll pretty well on your saves. Yeah, the 10 squad died just because it was just a numbers game, and so that was basically it there. Yeah. So I actually really like the Custodies. I had another list. It was super mean, but. Well, yeah, I had a couple of list ideas, but I only made 2 of them. But so, yeah, I don't know. I think Custodies don't need transports. They all have 6-inch movement. The Terminators aren't slowed down by their armor. They still have the 6-inch movement. They can run. They have all kinds of... So I don't think they actually need the transports. They can do ridiculous things with the teleportation. So I was able to put a Dreadnought in Deep Strike. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so, I actually really dig the Custodies, but I think Sisters of Silence don't really fit. I think if you're going to take them, you want to take just one, maybe a HQ like Alea or something.
Maybe 2. Like, I've noticed in Tournament Standard is like 2 point holders. So 2.
Oh, well, yeah, those guys, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, overall, I was surprised that Genestealer Cults was able to punch above its weight, using lots of tactics, lots of good firepower. Although the fact that you had very few Custodies was a benefit to me, but like I had to adjust my strategy. So winning was surprising, but it was very close at points simply because of that always fight first was such a big deal. And so luckily I could counter it, but very little. Like only my general and one of your squads could be forced to fight last to have a chance. So. Yeah.
It was actually pretty cool, though, having the fight first as an army trait. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And being immune to hit and wound roll modifiers. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I think it was an interesting game. I don't think I would take Sisters of Silence again, except for like the point holders and maybe Alea, or even they have a 50-point HQ Sister of Silence that can literally just run around and be obnoxious. So I don't think I would take the Rhinos, the Land Raider, the squad, because again, those 2 squads, the 2 Rhinos, the Land Raider, that would have been a lot more actual Custodies.
Yeah.
And Custodies are super rude. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Alright then. Well, GG's and GG's.